Welcome back to episode 2 of A Scotch and a Beer with Officer Dan. Thank you guys so much for watching the last video. Got a lot of positive comments. I wasn't expecting that. Old washed up FD driver talking for 20 minutes. Who knew? Anyway, thank you guys so much. I hope you enjoyed this episode as well. So we're gonna pick up right where we left off with my first drift event. So first, of course, because this is A Scotch and a Beer with Officer Dan, I have the, again, Santa Fe Brewing Company. Now, this one's only cool because it has the New Mexico state flag thing on the front of the beer can. I don't like IPAs at all, and that's what this is, but it was in my refrigerator. So we're gonna go ahead and crack this open. And just as suspected, it tastes like licking a pine tree. As for the Scotch I will be drinking tonight, this one is a real treat. Although it is still only a 10-year-old Scotch, this is the Laphroaig 10. Laphroaig, pronounced Laphroaig, is an all-malt Scotch whiskey from the remote island of Islay in the Western Isles of Scotland. Laphroaig is a Gaelic word and means the beautiful hollow by the broad bay. That's a lot of words for one word. In the making of Laphroaig, malted barley is dried over a peat fire. The smoke from the peat gives Laphroaig its particularly rich flavor. Laphroaig is best flavored neat or with a little cool water. I'm gonna leave 1 cube in there because that'll be my cool water. So Islay is where you're going to find your peaty, smoky, earthy, cigar butt style scotches. And that's exactly what this one is. It's definitely one of my favorites. Kind of what you imagine a Scotch to taste like. The other ones are very fruity, very friendly Scotches, and this one is kind of a punch you in the throat kind. So cheers to you guys for tuning in and watching this. And I'm gonna enjoy me some Laphroaig 10. God, that is a good Scotch. Absolutely one of my favorites. Anyway, let's get to it, shall we? Got a lot to talk about in this particular episode. Again, reaching back to my first drift event. I want to preface with the fact that coming into drifting, I knew zero about cars. Zero about being a mechanic other than bolting on a few small things to my WRX, headlights, a bike rack, a downpipe. Same with the STI. I installed a set of coilovers. I knew nothing about engines, knew nothing about engine management, knew nothing about wiring, knew nothing about building a car, knew nothing about suspension dynamics. I was an absolute complete rookie, and so throwing myself into the drift world was kind of a real eye-opener because, as you know, you break shit when you drift, especially if you're me. Don't know if you've met me, but I break a lot of stuff. Now, it didn't always start that way. When everything was stock, it worked fine, but the moment I touched something and or modified it is when it started to break. In the last episode, I bought my drift car. It was that 1989 240 SX, sewer drain gray metallic. Fell in love with it, went out to a bunch of parking lots in the middle of the night, way away from everybody, and just did donuts by myself. But I didn't actually drive at any of those events, I think, until the very end of 2007, and I may be wrong here with my dates, but I'm pretty sure it was the last 2 or 3 events in 2007 that I actually drove. So I do remember my first event. I needed a helmet. So I got on Craigslist and I found the cheapest helmet that I possibly could. It kind of smelled like kimchi had been rotting in there. So I dumped like a 1.5 cans of Axe in it, and it was okay at that point. Anywho, by this point I had bought 2 or 3 sets of 300ZX wheels and a set of Blitz Type 01s, which is probably the only set of real wheels Officer Dan has ever owned. I did really like those though. I used to go around to all of the tire shops in town and kind of rummage through their trash piles of old takeoff tires, and that's where my tires came from. Oh, text message. All right, stunt work. Hey, that's another story for another time. So that's how I got my tires. I had some 16s and some 17s, and I think a couple of sets of 15s that I got. Every wheel that I got was used from Craigslist, and I just made it work. And I used to just pile all of them inside of that S13 wherever I was going, and I would just take them with me. So I'm plenty stocked up on tires. I have wheels, I think I'm ready to go to my first drift event. Little did I know, I had no idea. All right, it's event day. And it's still that Pro-Am feeder series that I mentioned in the past. And it's $180 freaking to drive. So it's not cheap. I'm poor. I'm just getting into drifting. And I plop down the $180, get my wristband, head into the pits, unload all of my tires, brought my helmet that now smells like a locker room. There's probably 30 to 35 cars there, so there's a lot of waiting in line. It's a decently long course that we're running that involved part of the big oval into our small oval, back around, and you get in line. I honestly got 4 laps of practice, none of which were spent drifting. So, qualifying comes up. I've done my 4 laps of practice, which is, by my calculations of sucking at math, really freaking expensive. I do my qualifying lap number 1, and I auto-cross the living hell out of that course. Not one time did I break the tires loose during my entire first qualifying lap. I was kind of feeling confident coming into this event because I'm able to do donuts and figure eight's okay. I was still struggling with figure eights, and I had no idea why. They were just difficult for me. Donuts I had freaking dialed. I could do a donut around anybody at any point in time, and I was feeling froggy, you know? So I get out onto the track for my second one. I'm like, what the hell is wrong with me? I thought I was gonna be able to do this, but I couldn't. Round 2 comes up and did the exact same thing, except for I understeered all the way through this course, which was probably worse than just autocrossing it in the first place. Officer Dan sucked at drifting when he first started. That's fine. You gotta start somewhere. All you guys out there who are just starting, don't expect to be pro right away. I know that's what everybody thinks, and some people do. Some people latch onto it really quick. I didn't know enough about cars to make that transition. I understood it, but I didn't know how to make it work mechanically, which to this day is still kind of the case. Oh God, this beer. Go to Mexico. I get off the track, I go look at the qualifying, and I'm dead last. I just paid $180 for 6 laps, none of which were drifting, and I got dead last. Cool story. Anyway, after the event, my newfound friends and I went go-karting. We had a blast. Out in the parking lot, we're sitting there, we're chatting, we're talking about the drift event, and I'm talking about how bad I sucked and how I don't understand why I couldn't drift and why I was autocrossing and why I sucked so bad in the first place. Anyway, this guy named Tony Davis, now a good friend of mine, he probably gave me the best advice that night that stuck with me through the entire rest of my drift career. And my screen just turned off with my notes. The pieces of advice that Tony gave me were, weld your diff. Turns out my diff was open. I didn't know. I was just sending it the best I could, which wasn't very much. Tony introduced me to one of the other guys that was there that I didn't really get to know. His name was Andy Barrow. Andy Barrow is a fantastic fabricator, and he'll be kind of much more involved in my story as we go along, so you'll probably be hearing a lot about Andy. Andy's kind of a legend to me. Andy just said, hey, I can weld diffs. I will weld your diff for you for like $80. Just take it out, degrease it, and bring it to me and weld it. All right, cool. Got that one covered. We went over to my car and we looked at it, and I was running on 255s. So as you know, my car was single overhead cam, probably made all of like 97 horsepower, which I'll also get into in the future. 255s are a bit much for that. Didn't know. I was just taking takeoffs from the garbage and putting them on, and in first gear around a cone they worked. Why wouldn't they work on a racetrack? Idiot. So Tony says, you shouldn't run anything wider than a 205, 225 at maximum. So I took that to heart, and the next time I was rummaging through the tire piles, I made sure not to choose anything wider than a 225. He said, get a set of good front tires. So I did. I went out and bought a set of Yokohama Advan 8007s. I know you guys know what I'm talking about. Those were the shit. So I had those now on my Blitz Type 01s as fronts. On the backs, I had nothing wider than a 225. His next piece of advice, pump them shits up to like 80 pounds, dog. I don't think those were his exact words. So I took that into account. So if I'm understeering, put more air in the tires. Cool. lesson learned. And his last piece of advice to me, and I think the most important, was to actually go get a freaking alignment. I had no idea what the car was at. As I was going down the highway, anytime I'd hit a bump, it would like try to initiate drift, and that would scare the living crap out of me on the way home. I was all cockeyed and had no idea which way the front wheels were pointing, had no idea which way the rear wheels were pointing, don't even know if the frame was straight, didn't matter. I was just out there to send it. So he gave me a list of settings to bring to the gentleman, all of which was Greek to me. So I took the piece of paper, brought it to an alignment shop, and got that done. The car drove so much better after that. Here's another thing for the story of my first drift event, and why it was so memorable for me. We went straight from the racetrack to the go-kart track. My car has probably 8 sets of wheels and tires in it, most of which are shredded into pieces. The car is low, it's loud, and I'm probably sure it didn't even register it yet. I was just carrying around the title and insurance. So I'm driving home and I get pulled over like a block away from my house. I ended up getting like 14 tickets, which was absolutely fucking ridiculous. The dude got me from everything from too low to too loud to no safety equipment to having harnesses instead of seat belts to having improperly leveled headlights to, oh my God, he literally wrote the book on tickets for me. So this was another way that Andy from RaceFab came into play and wrote me receipts for all that stuff that got thrown out in court. Anyway, totally illegal. Thanks, Andy. You're the man now, doc. Moving on. First event's over. I totally sucked. So I had 2 months to get all of this stuff done from Tony's epic list. And I went to it like a bat out of hell. I got the diff out, I brought it to Andy, Andy welded the living crap out of it, put it back in the car, I sent it off to get an alignment after that, got it aligned, stocked up on 225 tires, and some 205s, whatever I could find. So now that I've done all the things on Tony's list, it's time to go out and try this sucker. I go out to my normal spot, 4 a.m., I set up some cones, and I do figure eights, and I get them every single time. It's like a light bulb went off in my head and I understood fundamentally what to do with the car because the car was actually listening to what I was telling it now. I wasn't fighting it, and thank you so much, Tony, for that life-saving advice. I probably still wouldn't be into drifting had you not given that to me. I think maybe 2 or 3 more events of me completely sucking at it and I probably would have quit. I mean, that's just what happened. So now again, 2 months left till the next event. What do I do with my time? Become a moron, that's what. So like I said, I always went out by myself and decided to go with a couple of guys, some good buddies of mine, Tyler, Gavin, and Andy. It was a little thing we called drift panding. I know, believe me, stupid name, whatever, it didn't matter. We were so into it, we just wanted to go be the cool kids. You know, we just wanted to go have fun. Find this abandoned parking lot, and we all go out there this time. And I think Tyler was in a freaking Honda Civic, and he actually drifted the living shit out of that thing, so kudos to him for that. Andy was in an RX-7, like naturally aspirated, white FC, and Gavin was in an S14, I believe, with an SR20. Anyway, we hit this spot. Tyler and Gavin take off, so now it's just me and Andy here. I got a buddy in the car. I'm watching Andy, and Andy's a shredder. Andy's a shredder already. Andy has way more experience driving than I do. Andy's one of those dudes that's just good at whatever he does. Andy's going around this curb and spins out and almost hits the curb, and I'm watching this in my rearview mirror. And as I say, holy shit, he almost hit the curb, boom, smash. I'm now high-centered on a curb myself. Oh, goddamn rookie mistake. I back off the curb and we assess the damage. I punctured a hole in my radiator, so I take off home to try and salvage what I can. After jacking it up and looking at the damage, I had bent the radiator support in, which bent the tension rod bracket. I was like, God damn it, this car was so good, and I ruined it because I'm an idiot and I went street drifting. Pretty much the last time I went out and did that. So I asked around and found a new tension rod bracket. I got aftermarket tension rods, which I promptly painted pink for some stupid reason. Put a jack in between the motor and the radiator support and jacked that thing back out to where it was supposed to be. Sick. Funny part is I still fix cars like that. Got it fixed up and went back to my routine of practicing at 4 a.m. by myself. No more stupid idiot showing off, looking at other people. I wanted to focus on me and my skills, or lack of. Fast forwarding, I've already been an idiot. I have my first drift event in the books, and now it's time for drift event number deuce. I pony up the 180 bucks, I jump in, I get my 4 laps of practice, and this time it's a game changer. I actually drifted our entire small oval, which is a big feat for me because that was one of the big things that I had a question about, was how to stay in drift for so long without coming out or understeering, and it felt freaking awesome. I think that topped doing donuts for the first time, and it's just like, okay, now I get it. You're going in the top of second gear and you're going around this corner and it's sideways and it's noisy and there's stuff flying in your face. Man, that is such a good memory and it's such a good feeling for me. Go ahead and get a refill. Beer sucks though. I'm probably not going to finish that. If you like IPAs, you'd probably like that, but I'm not into it. I just can't, but I do like Laphroaig. Good Islay. Even neat is fan-fucking-tastic. I am feeling way better about myself drifting. I've now drifted the small oval. I have no idea how to transition. I have no idea how to manji. I have no idea how to left foot brake. I have no idea about anything else other than the fact that I nailed that one corner. And that's all that mattered to me. I'm pretty sure I spun out every time I did it, but it didn't matter. I got it, and it felt good. Qualifying comes up, and I botch it. I completely lose everything. I didn't know what to do with my hands. I lost every ounce of being able to drive possible, and again, I just understeered and autocrossed the course, ended up dead last again. Still, one of the most memorable events of my life because it was the first time I actually drifted around a corner. Oh God, it was so good. Now that I had a basic understanding of what to do in drift, I needed to learn how to start drifting and how to transition back and forth. And that's where doing larger scale figure eights came into play. So back at my spot, I set the cones way far apart and I came in with a little bit more speed this time because I'd actually done it and I felt more comfortable with it and I kind of knew what to do. So did the whole thing, spread the cones out as far as I possibly could to try to stretch out, entering into the cones, using the e-brake a little bit, clutch kicking, just trying the different techniques I saw in the Drift Bible, which I highly recommend you watch if you're getting into drifting. 2 more months and it's the last event of the season. Basically been into drifting for 5 months now. There's another event in a month and Andy and I have become pretty good friends. We kind of decide together that, well, mostly him because he did everything and had all the tools and had all the anyway. We decided to start a shop called RaceFab. 98% was Andy's and I bought a belt sander. We started a shop called RaceFab. Andy started paying rent. I was paying half at this warehouse. His dad had a t-shirt printing company. He taught me how to print t-shirts. So I also started my first clothing company called Fe Clothing back in 2007. I learned a lot. I printed a lot of shirts. I didn't sell a lot and I wasn't very good at it. People would wash the shirts and all the ink would come off. That's a completely different story for a different time. So Fe Clothing was my first foray into kind of doing t-shirts and modeling. I have done some stupid stuff. Anyway, because of Fe Clothing, we met a guy called Niko Villegas. Amazing photographer. Like, holy shit, whoa. Amazing photographer. he took those sick modeling shots I just put up. If he can make me look good, he can make anything look good. We invite Niko to come out to the next drift event, which is our last drift event of the season. And I've, again, been practicing entries and practicing manjis and practicing transitions and getting everything dialed in. So, third event comes up. It's the last event of the season. I'm way back in the back holding down last place like a freaking champion. So I got nothing to lose. You know, nothing's on the line for me. I'm just there to have a good time and get my 8 laps of practice or whatever for $180. In the driver's meeting, they explained if you have a low horsepower car, please don't try to drift the big bank. I mean, you can, but if you're not having the skill to do so, we were supposed to initiate very, very late into the big bank and start into the small bank because that was the last course that we ran. I said, okay, cool, I'm gonna do that. My first qualifying lap, I initiated late, just like they said. I hung wide, just like they said. I kept going in drift all the way through and around. I came through our small oval, still in drift, and then my car didn't have the horsepower to finish that corner, or I wasn't being aggressive enough to do so. So I straightened out a little bit, but then clutch kicked in and did my first transition around the clipping point and back. And I actually linked from one corner to the other. And another crowning achievement of my drift career, I had manjied to straight and entered into the corner properly. My first run, I spun out at the finish line, getting a big fat goose egg, but that's okay. I had learned something and I was up. Qualifying run number 2 comes up. Do the same thing, initiate all the way through, hold a little bit more aggressively through that last turn, manji the straight, come back around and actually went through the finish line. I was in the car like, what just happened? I think I almost completed the course. So I head out and I checked the rankings and I was 14th. I qualified, I made top 16. And I couldn't drive anymore because I didn't have a roll cage. Dreams promptly shot down. But huge accomplishment for me, making top 16 at my third drift event and just being proud of that. I was very, very, very ecstatic. I did 3 events at the very, very end of 2007. I was more pumped on drifting than I'd ever been in my entire life. I had almost completed an entire course in a very, very low horsepower car that now, thanks to Tony and Andy, was a decently properly set up car. Still making no horsepower, but God, it was fun to drive. I had now qualified top 16 at my third event ever. I was super, super pumped. It's now officially the off season. And that is where I'm gonna end this video, sadly. There's still so much more I have to tell you guys about this story. I promise it gets nothing but better, more crazy, more ridiculous, and absolutely out of control the more I get into it and as time goes by. There's a couple of things that were like catalysts for me, and we'll be going over those kind of in the next video. Again, Andy played such a huge part in that. I'm so thankful to have him in my life. But I'm excited to share that with you guys, so stay tuned for video number 3 on what it's going to be, my second season of drifting. And thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked it, please like, share, and subscribe, because I know a lot of you guys are kind of going through the same thing. You're starting out, and how do you do it? And this is kind of going to go through my whole career. Stay tuned for some more cool shit. Anyway, this is Officer Dan, going to finish this Laphroaig. I hope you guys go out and get some yourself, because it is absolutely amazing. Take my word for it. If you trust me on anything, trust me on this. This is a fantastic Scotch, which in the next episode, I get to tell you how I got into Scotches in the first place. So, all right, I'll catch you on the flip side with Officer Dan, bidding you a wonderful evening.